Oh my.
Theme song, theme song, theme song, theme song. There is no theme song. Not this week.
Why not?
I don't know. I don't know how to find a theme song to even upload it. So we're just starting right into the conversation. No intro, no outro.
No, I
Just
want you to make one up on the fly. Come on, you're a DM. Wing it.
no. You're the guest. You have to do it.
I got to do it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Grumpy Podcast. The Grumpy Podcast. We're some grumpy bitches. Yeah. There you go.
Well, I'm Chris, and that's ReverendPanda
Chris.
there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Christopher.
sure. Let's do ReverendPanda. That's right.
Well, yeah, because you're also Chris. That's why I'm Christopher. In case anyone mixes it up. But yeah, Jay is not going to be able to make it this week. So he's also the guy that puts everything together and makes everything sound good and throws in the intro and the outro and the middle part, and all that's not going to happen this week. We're going to record this one shot, and I'm going to publish it, and we're going to see what happens. And this is going to be the Chris Spectacular episode.
Indeed. You have to deal with my unprepared unreadiness.
I mean, that's the fair. I mean, I asked you like 15 minutes ago to record a podcast with me, so it is what it is.
Sure. I didn't tell them that. I was willing to take the blame, man. All right.
It's all your fault.
All right, cool. I'm fine with that.
So how's my map coming along?
Slow. New Mexico, it's a little slow. It's a lot of finagling, and even with the adjustments we've made, it's hard to fit all that stuff into a map.
So, a bit of backstory behind that is for the Owl campaign that I'm running, I needed to design a castle in the Feydark, and I wanted it to be an ancient Fomorian castle. And it's not going to be really a spoiler by the time this comes out. My players will be going into it next Saturday, so... Ooh.
Oh, I have to have this done by next Saturday. Good to know.
Yeah, the 11th. That was the deadline.
You didn't give me a date.
I gave you the 11th.
No one ever gives me dates. They just be like, oh, by the way, it's due tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, shit. Okay.
So when
the kid who tells them, oh, yeah, Mom, I've got a bake sale tomorrow. Can you bake 24 cookies? Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, sorry, we always have cookies. We always have cookies baking in this house. So
lucky you.
So it's an ancient Fomorian castle in the Feydark that's been abandoned and in ruins for centuries, and all sorts of creepy shit lives there. And I drafted out a version of it, pretty much in MS Paint, and gave you a text file describing most of the locations. I left a couple things just up in the air for your own creative liberties to do with what you will. And we ran into an issue immediately because it's an ancient Fomorian castle, and the scale of it is really hard to work out. Everything's got to be basically double the size because the Fomorians are giants or large creatures, and if they were stationed here, everything's just going to be a massive thing. The gateway is going to be twice as big as normal. The buildings are twice as big as normal. Well, normal in relation to how you would find a current dungeon or something in any kind of like official material, which made me wonder if there actually ever was official material that had a giant's castle or a giant's location.
There has to be.
You would think so, but I've never seen one in all of 4th. I haven't seen one. I haven't seen one in any in 5th. We don't have Jay here to tell us how 3.5 and 2nd edition didn't have any. But I mean, I've been perusing through all my new 2E modules, and there's no giant anything in there. Like when it comes to structures that are giants, just no one has anything.
Bizarre.
So
no, yeah, nothing that really hits my memory either when I'm thinking about it.
I mean, I say that now. I just think of the Storm Giants place, and there's a couple other locations, but everything was kind of small. Nothing really huge or massive to actually this castle was a giant's castle. Again, I didn't do Storm King's Thunder, so I could be absolutely completely wrong. And there's just a ton of it in Storm King's Thunder, and
I also did not do Storm King's Thunder,
and that's where we go wrong. Because I know like the fire giants and shit like that. There's a lot of stuff with them, but I'm wondering if just like if things aren't really drawn to that scale. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it right now, and I'm looking at the Iron Slag, the Forge of the Fire Giants, and there's a couple areas that are the rooms are pretty massive. They're all like 30 by 70 at least, but overall, just all the hallways are just too wide. There's one hallway that's 4 wide. That's
Yeah, I
really
mean,
interesting.
yeah, it's not surprising either from my experience now already just dealing with this map it is a pain in the ass to get them all to everything to sort of like to scale up. You wouldn't think it would be. I mean, literally it's just doubling everything. But you have
Yeah,
to then keep in mind, like, it's all right, cool, you're doubling everything, but I don't know, there's something about it that just makes it more temperamental. Trying to fit it all together.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, you think you
and
just make a normal sized map and then just blow it up and stretch it out, or
yeah,
shrink the grid size, but
no, because there's a different way. It's like when I'm doing things, like if something is crumbling down like little bits and pieces, and something's like broken apart, it looks different. Like you have to go from the bigger to even smaller chunks. Does
hmm
that make any sense? So
yeah,
when I'm looking at it perspective wise, I can't just like drop broken pieces and then of the same scale as like the wall that I have crumbling apart. I have to make the wall a certain size. I have to make all of the broken pieces a certain size, and then I have to make smaller pieces because it should have crumbled into even smaller bits. Where normally you don't have to think about that. You just go off whatever scale you're working on. So it's a little odd. The perspective just gets a little weird, is all. Um,
yeah.
and
I'm
also
looking
because
at
if something normal is growing, say something like you have at one point in the map, you specifically something that is covered in mushrooms. Well,
yeah,
the mushrooms aren't ginormous. The
right,
mushrooms are mushrooms, so it's a ton of mushrooms over something much bigger, and it's just something you have to keep in mind as you're going along. That's all. Not
yeah.
bad, just something to keep in mind.
I'm looking at some of the maps in the Storm King's Thunder, and like I said, like yeah, a lot of it's just like the giants are there, but the rest of the scale of the area just isn't built for them in there. At very least, it's just a large hallway, but that's pretty much standard. A
I
large width
in
hallway.
Storm King's Thunder though, don't they take over other places? Like they didn't build them themselves.
I don't know. I actually haven't gone through it. I'm just kind of looking at the different maps that they have,
I
and
don't
they
know.
all kind of look like the giants are put there after the map was designed.
Well, that could be the case. But also, it could be just the thing where that like they took over a dwarven stronghold and now they live there.
This is my home now, little man.
Pretty much. I mean, it's not like giants have tons of crafters hanging around in their society.
No, I mean typically they don't. I mean, I think the giants in 5e, at least the couple of the groupings of them have structures that I made. I know like the sky giants, I think do.
Yeah, and fire giants are blacksmiths.
Yeah.
Um,
So
you
the
can
one
run
thing
into those.
that's the first thing I looked at was the fire giants forge, the iron slag, and like I said, besides one main hallway, everything else is just built to a medium size creature scale. The mine carts are that size. The beds are that size.
Well, what size are their? I mean, again, that probably comes down to them. What size are their slaves? They're giants.
That's fair.
I mean,
But then you don't. But then you don't give prisoners with jobs beds. You just let them sleep on the floor.
yeah. So yeah, I think what I have learned so far about doing maps though is that I need to start making um I need to basically need to make a form where it's
Yeah.
like you want a map. Cool. How big? What season is it? what do you specifically want to make sure you see on this map? How, is there any particular feature of terrain that needs to be of a particular size or noteworthy? Because I have noticed one thing, because I've been doing a lot of freelance maps since the last time I did one of these podcasts. I've taken on a bunch of jobs. I am now also contracted to be another streamer's personal map maker, where I make a certain amount of maps for him every single month, on a regular basis for a regular amount of money. And the amount of admittable frustration that comes into the play when it's like, okay, cool, you told me you wanted for example, a waterfall map. Cool, big waterfall going off a cliff. That's all I've been told. So I make that map, and then they come back to him. Oh, by the way, it's autumn. Okay, well, let me go back in and change all the colorations on everything that I have down. Okay, there needs to be some broken landscape as well. Okay, cool. Then I got to go back in and change out everything again and put in broken landscape. That sort of thing where, like, I need to know all this stuff up front. Save me some time. Because holy crap. The back and forth costs a lot of time.
Yeah, I remember we had I had read something that Chris Perkins put out about how he was commissioning artists to draw magic items, and he basically had to write a descriptive piece for every single one of those magic items. And I always wondered what that text file that he created and wrote up looked like at the end of it, and then what he got back in relation to what he wrote. Because I figured there was always this, there's a lot of, I give something to you as the artist, and then the artist is going to give me their interpretation back of what I gave them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm used to that being in, my professional life, where, software development and architecture development, stuff like that, cloud development, where, hey, for the customer needs this kind of system to run these kind of things, and I go in and analyze their data and come back with exactly what they need, what I think they need, and it's never what they thought that they needed or thought that they wanted, because what they gave me as the requirements weren't really the requirements,
Right.
So from my standpoint, being the artist in that situation, I had to learn to read between the lines a lot so I could figure out exactly what they really needed. And it's pretty easy after you do it a number of times to kind of like, oh, yeah, we have to, upload 5 terabytes of data every single week, and we have 5,000 users that hit our servers once every 4 months. Like, okay, so you're not going to build out to that number, even though you're using that number as a basis of normal users. So it can definitely be frustrating. So that's when I gave you the draft and I gave you the text file, I was thinking, okay, this is all pretty well standard. I have a little map and I have what I want these things to be. And here's a little descriptor for each and every single room. And I was very specific with what I wanted and where I wanted certain things. But then I also know that when I send it over to you, you are going to come back with something almost entirely different.
Yep.
So, like,
yeah.
like I from what I've seen in the map so far, you have the 2 buildings crumbling off the side of the crack in the world. That's cool. And then I know I had other buildings on the right hand side of the map that you hadn't put in yet. So I'm very curious to see how those are going to fit in with what you've drafted out. But I know it's not going to be anything near what I developed. I have to trust that. I have to trust you as the artist to tell me, based on what I gave you, what I need. So it's very disheartening to hear that the people that you're doing maps for aren't giving you that data up front. Like if I tell you, hey, I need all this, and I forget to tell you a huge fact like, oh, it has to be autumn, that's a distressing thing to hear, because they should have had that in their requirements.
I think the worst one that's come up so far has been Desert Ruin Bandit Camp, and then basically told me Like there's gonna be like 15 monsters and like one main monster in there, and I'm like, all right, cool. So I started building up like this desert fortress. And I wanted to build it like mostly intact at first. And then once I like had it like pictured out in my brain what it looked like intact, I was then going to break it apart and add in more broken walls and crack things and basically like if I was actually building it in like a physical object. Like I was building real world terrain. Um, so I got all the way up and I built like the most of the fort, and I got to the point where I'm like, all right, this looks pretty good. There's cactuses built alongside of a cliff. I then sent that off to the guy, and I got back a day later. Oh, I forgot to tell you, it's an underground dungeon. What?
Yeah. You're not going to get that off a desert base. Jeez.
That wasn't in the notes. So sure enough, I had to take it all, and I'm like, cool, that's scrapped. I'm just gonna put that by the side, use it for something else, and
that's gonna go on my
Patreon.
Patreon.
Underground mob, yeah, pretty much. So I really need to get a forum together that's like, and this is exactly, and this is what you can expect when you ask for a map.
So like I've commissioned a couple pieces of artwork from artists of various degrees of skill. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But every single one has always done it the same way, regardless of how long they've been in the business or how professional they are. They always draft out something in like line work or pencil and come back and say, "Is this what you want?" And I give them a yes or a no. And then they come back, with any edits. And then they go, "Okay, cool, I'm going to color." And then they go to color and they come back to me. It's like, "Is this the colors that you want?" I'm like, "Yes or no." And we do some fixes. And then they come back with the final piece and that's it. You're done, But
Yeah,
map work,
that's
you really
harder to
can't do
do.
that. Yeah, you
I'm using
can't.
assets and textures that are, and I can
Yeah,
manipulate all those textures and assets to a degree. But for the most part, I am still limited to the tools that I have to work with or what I can then build myself in like Photoshop.
yeah,
I think the biggest problem with map hacking has come in with the fact that is the realistic sort of pay structure to how much time somebody thinks a map takes.
yeah.
Or
That's
even
always
like an
that's
edit
always
will
going to be a
take.
problem.
Because
Yeah,
it's like I got a note on one other map that I was doing at one point, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, just you can move this around. Hopefully, it'll only take you like 10-15 minutes." And I was just like, "You have no idea. This is going to take me hours."
yeah.
Because they needed something added on, like they needed basically a cliff extended farther down, but the cliffs I had on the bottom were at the -5 layer in incarnate, which is the lowest layer you can go. So the only way to add more cliffs underneath the cliffs so that it looks like it's a longer drop was to take all the cliffs on the map, every asset, slide them upwards to give myself enough room to then build down.
Huh.
And they're like, oh, 10-15 minutes. That's an easy fix. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's really
Surprise!
not.
Surprise Incarnate is limited by how many layers you can go up or down.
It is important to keep in mind that for the type of program that it is,
Yeah,
it does amazing things and allows for a lot of creativity and builds. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff I can knock out. Like it can make amazing things, but the tools are still limited to a certain degree, and they kind of have to be because the more that gets introduced, the more buggy this thing can get. And I definitely have run into my fair share of bugs using Incarnate.
well, I mean,
Um,
at the end of the day, Web Incarnate is a web-based map making tool, and that's
exactly.
highly limited. I mean, you look at a program like Photoshop, which runs on its own separate instance, running on your computer or it's software that you've installed. It's much more sophisticated and uses much more processing power than just Google Chrome window.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can definitely understand that frustration. And the pay thing is something that unfortunately no one is ever going to come
Oh
to
God, no!
sufficient with.
Trust me. When I was getting into this, I wasn't expecting to be like, I shall be the first person making things where I will be paid appropriately. It's no, I need money, and you're going to offer me this amount of money to make a thing, and I'm going to go, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So like like I said, I've hired a lot of artists, and I've gotten what I've considered very good prices, and I've gotten very poor prices. And like, I always want to pay the artist what they think that they're worth. I saw a guy recently when I was on vacation this weekend who was making this kind of like weird, almost Durgar like race that he had, and it was an amazing looking race. And he had like
Mm-hmm.
graphite pencils and full color works, and the work was amazing. And he wanted something like I think it was $500 for a full color caricature in pretty much like let's just say D&D art style detail. And I have a professional friend of mine who Adam Shumpert who does that same style of work. And like for example, he's the Black Die Society.
Right.
Um, the artwork that they use for the promoting the show and stuff, that's his piece. He did that. If you go to his art station on Google, you can look at all the work that he's done. He does amazing work. And I know how much he charges for a full art caricature. Okay.
Right.
And I use him kind of like my baseline. So if you're charging me, let's say $500 for this, it has to be greater than or equal to Adam Shumpert's work because to me, that's the best work on the internet right now. So I've seen some people who come by with like this like 1990s style, I'm still in high school, work. And they're like, yeah, that's going to be $350 for a full caricature. And you're like,
No.
no, no,
Like
sorry, no.
I appreciate that. It takes time and you put in work, but that's not
Yeah.
a reasonable price.
Yeah. And that's why I always talk price first. I was like, these are the things I'm going to want. How much are you going to charge for each of them?
Mm-hmm.
And like I hired an artist from my LARP to do all the busts for all the OWL campaign characters, and I paid them um, exactly what they asked for, and they pretty much just set a price. It was a little bit higher than I wanted, but I wasn't going to argue it either. I was just going to like, okay, this is the price you want. I'm getting 10 busts of these owls. That works for me. And it took them. They were much faster at doing that work than I thought they would be. And overall, it came out to a good price for me, and that's the price that they wanted. And just it sucks for you because like I've seen some of the stuff that you do, and I actually thought about that for a little bit too. It's like how much would I pay just to own that map, you know? And then I was like, okay, if I started that price, let's say $150, and I know you spend anywhere between 4 and 6 hours on something, you
Yeah,
know.
it's fair.
So let's just say 5 for easy math. You're looking at $30 an hour for 150 piece for a big piece of work. Like
I'm not getting that
that's
much
about
money.
right.
Yes.
That's about right, but that's what I would expect to pay from my standpoint.
Right.
But
I have maps that I make that will
yeah.
take me 4 to 6. Take 6 hours for a map, and I'll get somewhere between like $15 to $25 for it. That's
Yeah.
it. It's just
But I mean,
that's what it is.
yeah. At the end of the day too, I mean, map making is definitely very an integral part of D&D and tabletop. People want maps, and there are a number of people out there that have Patreons. You have a Patreon. You can plug it right now if you want to.
Hey guys, check out if you go into Patreon, look for ReverendPanda. I have map pack. I have maps that I put up there, and pretty much anything that I make on stream will eventually end up on my Patreon. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay because people like to use them in the games that the people get to see spoilers, but everything ends up in my Patreon eventually. So go check that out. Reverend Panda.
So like,
Pretty much
so when I
everywhere.
was when I was running Icewind Dale, um, there's another Patreon out there, another competitor for you.
Of course. A
He's
billion of
Pog
them.
S underscore props, so Pog S props, and
As
he
long as his name
does.
isn't Panda.
It's not Panda. Um, it's Pog S props, and he basically did all the maps for Icewind Dale right out of the gate. He also did Avernus and Tyranny of Dragons. Something I know you're kind of doing for the Feywild stuff. You're making a bunch of circus theme maps and stuff for that as well.
3 more to go.
And he pretty much, like I said, he opened the book and started just making the maps. And all I had to do was basically just join his Patreon for 1 month at the top tier. Basically gave him $10, download all the maps that I needed, and I was good to go.
Yeah.
I felt real bad about that, but at the same time too, it was like, well, these are all the maps that I need, and they're really good. So
yeah. But there's the thing. It's like, and yes, and in a very pragmatic and cost-effective way, that is the way to do it. That is the super best way to do that. There's the thing to keep in mind if a year later you go, hey man, I want to see what other new maps he's done and check those out, and realize that he doesn't make maps anymore, and you go, oh, I wonder why you stopped making maps. That's why.
Yeah.
But it's the nature. That's how that goes. I mean, it's what Patreon is. And I looked at a couple of the other Patreons, other like pay structures, like pay per map or something like that, and I could throw them up at like 50 cents a piece, something along those lines. But they all just seem it was all very fiddly and fuddly duddly, and basically, I'm too old to figure out all that nonsense.
You're never too old. You just get more grumpy.
I definitely get grumpy.
So,
but yeah,
let's move on. Let's move on from maps. I know we've bored everybody enough about maps.
But that's what I know. But yes, absolutely.
That's all I can do, man. That's all I can do.
I'm working on your map while we were talking because you said things, and I was like, "Oh shit, I got to do just that."
So there's like no D&D news going on right now. I know that the Nerds campaign started this month, and I traveled out with my family for the weekend, which is why there was no stream on Saturday. And I know that you're supposed to buy Nerds at participating retailers, and then scan your receipt and get the Nerds D&D Adventures. And being in the state that I'm in, I have to get those. I have to find those and get those.
Sure.
So
Of course.
I stopped by maybe 6 gas stations while I was out. Some local, some not local. And let me tell you, not a single place sold Nerds. Not a single gas station sold any type of Nerds candy.
Okay, it's true.
So what happened to Nerds that they have this D&D campaign going on right now for D&D nerd-based adventures, and then I can't find Nerds
we got to go to like
anywhere.
Target and Walmart and stuff.
They don't sell Nerds at Target and Walmart.
They
come in gas stations.
Do.
You go to gas stations or crap like that.
No, not for Nerds.
But other than Nerds thing that I've talked with about Jay and the Nerfs guns, I haven't seen any D&D news at all.
It's like we got front loaded. I think that's what it really comes down to. They announced all their new books coming out, and now we're in that little lull between, when the news pops and when they actually get released.
Well, so the Feywild book comes out later this month.
Yep.
And there hasn't been a single thing on like D&D Leaks or any other site at all about, or even previews of the book anywhere. And the last thing that was out there was the class survey that you filled out, you said, right?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Remember how I said I was going to go and fill it out?
Yeah, it takes forever. I
never did. Yeah. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I absolutely did not. I was like, oh, questions? Yeah, I'm done.
Nope, I went through them all.
Other than the Rangers suck, what was the most critical piece of information you gave?
The critical piece of information? It's honestly, 5th edition has been out. I don't see the point in the survey on it, if I'm being frank. It's 5th edition's been out for years. PHB has been out. What's it been? 8 years?
A while, yeah.
About that. They know what's wrong with their system. They've had to do errata. They had to do Tasha's with fixes and adding stuff and trying to like patch hole like the crappy parts. They know what's wrong with it, so I have no idea why they bothered with this, except for the conjecture that, of course, runs around about why the survey is happening at all. But I mean, the general feedback that I gave them, besides like the obvious of like, you know, your ranger is pointless. There's no point in playing one at all. You can do a better ranger by playing almost any of the other classes and calling yourself a ranger. It came down to sometimes that they were too limited in some things. That sometimes that some of the classes, to me, they lacked flavor that they certainly try to throw back in to like later versions. Like I was never a big fan of any of the rogue subclasses. Not for what they do, but for the sort of almost the genericness of what they are. It's like you're the thief, the assassin, or the magic-y version, which kind of sucks compared to like older versions of what a spell thief used to be. It's just like it's I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this. Is that it was too there wasn't enough flavor added into it. Into any of the classes, and some of that is kind of falls back to the fact that fifth edition in general, when the book came out, had an entire lack of flavor to begin with across the board. They didn't settle on a particular set of gods. They didn't talk about a setting. They gave you a bunch of rule sets and said, "Oh yeah, here's some of the gods for all of the different realms we use." Like nothing held a niche within like the world. Like when you talked about the paladin class, you didn't talk about Torm, which I specifically remember was a thing that like was back in like 3.5. You talked about the gods that the paladins were tied to when you talked about paladin. Paladin is now about these oaths that you take, where they talk about like if you break the oaths and you lose your powers, but there's no rules for how you do that. It's this real generic-y sort of blah.
Yeah, there was definitely a focus on the mechanics and not the lore behind the mechanics in fifth.
Right, and like the best you got out of any of the classes were a little blurb, like a little paragraph of why you might be this thing, and that was it. Like it just it lacked flavor. So I guess that was my big like criticism, and that was an overarching sort of thing when it came to all of the classes, was just that it lacked flavor. In fact, the one class that I think had the best flavor, and that's only because their flavor is so tied to their mechanics, was the wizard. Because at least with that one, you still had like you're collecting your spell book and what you're putting in there, and you have to like make the copies of it, and you at least still had the different breakdowns of the different schools. Although they got rid of it really being a specialty school or having an opposing school that you didn't therefore do as well in, which I kind of liked flavor wise. I get that mechanically that's a little limiting for in some people, but flavor wise, that was always a great thing that I enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that comes from the fact too that, like I said, we've talked about this in the previous podcast, because I know you listen to it all the time. But we talked a lot about how fifth edition doesn't have any campaign settings. It's all adventure books or of everything, all-encompassing books. There was not any. Here's the Forgotten Realms campaign book for fifth edition. Here's the Forgotten Realm, or here's the Cholt book. And here's the Thay book. It was all tied into the adventure stuff. So like when you look at like Waterdeep or Storm King's Thunder, all the lore for that area is tied into that book, along with all the adventures, and stuff has to get cut. Whereas if you look at the Forgotten Realms campaign guide in fourth edition, which I just purchased and kind of flipped through, it's all basically world building for Forgotten Realms. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the end, here's a small adventure to get you started. And I really like that style better. I like the campaign places better because that helps me
I agree.
build more things. The Waterdeep book had a lot of stuff all about Waterdeep at the very end, which is really fantastic. The first 4 chapters of that book is the adventure, and the other 4 chapters are just fluff. So,
But there's and this is the and again, yeah, you're right. This kind of goes back, and like you said, you've talked about this before. But like, I couldn't tell you what's going on in the Forgotten Realms right now. I have no idea.
nope, yep,
There's been adventures out there, but I don't know what the overarching politics are. I don't know what's going on. Like if there's any rivalry currently active between Baldur's Gate and Waterdeep. I don't know what's going on up in like the frozen north near what's the like the, all you know all the different competing cities like trade wise they're up there and like the big dwarven city up there and they compete with trade agreements. And I know all this from lore that I've had to actively search and almost exclusively comes from older editions.
yep.
But I couldn't tell you what's going on with the world now.
And
They
the
have
worst part,
dropped
the worst,
all of that stuff, and it's frustrating.
and the worst part is too is that they don't tell you how the campaigns end canonically. You don't know how Waterdeep ends. You don't know what happens to Avernus, or not Avernus, but you don't know what happens to not Candlekeep.
Alariel.
Yeah, Alariel at the end of Descent into Avernus. Like, did it come back? Did it not come back? Did Tiamat rise again? What's
Yeah,
going on? And there is no answers. And I don't think they plan on answering it. Like, I did find an answer to Waterdeep, and Xanathar got the treasure at the end. Or actually, he really didn't get the treasure, but he got the key and opened the vault. But
sure.
at the end of the day, like where is the book that says that? Where is my thing saying this is the current state of the world?
And maybe this is the problem with the fact that I don't read the books, like the novels, because maybe that's
I
where all
don't
that information is, and maybe they consider that all canon.
know that. Well, that was the other discussion. Is everything only the books, only what they talk about and what they write about is canon. The Dritz stuff that R.A. Salvatore writes is not canon, but yet they keep pulling everything from that. And the stuff that's happening with Dritz isn't. There's not enough there to tell you what's going on in all Forgotten Realms, and there are no other books.
No, there's a ton of D&D books.
Not novels.
Yeah. Come on, I hear
No,
him talk about it all the time. Like Patrick Rothfuss had a bunch of them.
that was
Um,
all a while ago.
but they did come out with a butt ton of books at one point. It was a huge thing they talked about for a while. I just admit I'm not gonna lie, I didn't track it a whole lot because I don't read the novels. Because I'm behind on the authors that I really enjoy before trying to delve into some of the D&D ones. Oh my god! But I'm looking at like the list of all the D&D novels right now. And not R.A. Salvatore.
Yeah, the last thing I knew was the early 2000s was all when all last of the novels wrote. They haven't written anything since then.
There's Endless
Um,
Quest. I don't know what that is though.
other than Dritz coming out, I don't think there's been anything released recently. Maybe 2012 with
Oh,
Neverwinter, but that was Salvatore again, and
you're right. Jesus. Where the
yeah,
hell
nothing.
is the lore behind D&D? That's what people got people into it, not just the like. And I get it, like a lot of people will homebrew stuff, but a lot of people would like want to travel the world of Forgotten Realms. They want that sort of like
So
exploration, but ugh, grumble, grumble, old man grumble.
so there is one book in 2016, four sorry, one in 2015, four in 2016, uh, a couple in 2017, but those are just Dritz books by Salvatore. The last like book that I can tell that was a series that was about the lore was the Sundering books by R.A. Salvatore. That I don't think were really Dritz related, and those are that the Sundering is the end of fourth edition.
Yeah.
So they haven't written any books that I can tell. Yeah,
Well,
nothing in 2018, nothing in 2019.
2016, you had Ed Greenwood, Death Masks. And you also had Aaron Evans, The Devil You Know, who also wrote Ashes of the Tyrant. Ed Greenwood did Spellstorm in 2015, but you're right. After that little period where like some of those books came out, I don't even see the Rothfuss stuff. So how long ago the hell was that? Like, I think I've just been in this little delusion, assuming that they were coming out with a bunch of novels.
No, like
apparently not.
The last lore ones I can see is the Sundering, and the Sundering is the end of 4th edition.
I also find it incredibly frustrating that I go to the D&D website, look for novels, and like the first 3 things there aren't novels at all. Like, why do you have this listed here? Like, it's the Young Adventurers collection where it talks about beasts and behemoths. Adventurer's guidebook is not a novel.
Those are basically D&D. It's D&D 5th edition for kids,
and that's great. That's lovely. It is. But they're not novels.
No. Well, they kind of are novels in a way. I mean, they're not presented like a player's handbook. It's like, hey, Timmy's going on an adventure and he's fighting this monster, and the monster has these stats, and he's going to use this longsword to fight. It's like a
weird. That's still not a novel.
Yeah.
That's an adventure book. That's an adventure guide. A novel is Timmy walked through the forest. It was dimly lit at night. No idea how to get back home. When he stumbled upon an unusual that's a novel. That's a story. These aren't stories. These are other. The Hero's Feast. Isn't that a cookbook? Why is a cookbook with the novels? I just get your crap together. I get I know we'll just go through all the books into this section, and then this way everyone will get to see all the products when they're looking at the novels. But then what's the point of me reducing it to novels? I'm sorry, I'm rambling and ranting over nonsense at this point.
I mean, that's kind of what we do at the podcast. We just ramble for an hour and a half. People listen.
That's fair. But I am on the positive side of things because I'm representing D&D and like that and stuff like that. I am pleased that they are. I'm hoping that the Feywild book has some real substance to it, and I'm not gonna lie. There's a part of me already worried that it won't. I'm worried it's not gonna delve into the Fey courts. I'm worried it's not gonna really give you a greater understanding of the Feywild in general. I think it's going to be a book focused on this little niche area of the Feywild that they've created for this book, and that is all we're going to know. That's all we're going to learn.
I'm guessing you didn't watch Chris Perkins' interview on the Feywild book, did
you? Oh, and I have not. Am I wrong? Please tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. It is just this small area of the Feywild that it's not connected to the Feywild of 4th edition been before in any way, shape, or form. And it's all new and different. And that's what started the conversation of, so what is canon in D&D? And them going, only what we publish in 5th edition.
Okay. But what they've published in 5th edition already are blurbs that discuss the Feywild and all of the other planes. At no point do they say these planes are, by the way, these planes are limited to this tiny little section that we're discussing right now.
They don't go into anything that, from what I've seen, they don't go into anything that is the Feywild proper. They only discussed hither, tither, and there, or whatever the place is, and the Prismar area of the Feywild.
God, I wonder how much, and there's a lot of legality about what you can and can't post on DM's Guild. I wonder how much I could do by just world designing the lore of the Feywild, and if I could actually post that to DM's Guild.
I think the Guild Adepts are already ahead of you on that.
Well, that's good. That's very good. I mean, my Feywild Folk and Moore pack that I put up on DM's Guild. Go check that out, everybody that's listening. Feywild folk and more. I mean, like I delved in a bunch of different races that I wanted to see in the Feywild because I was already upset by the fact that when I looked at, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, you were gonna get 2 races. I'm like, really? That's it? Like, I hope they do that. I know they're gonna like discuss some more monsters and stuff like that. But of all the Fey, that's what you're gonna give them? That sucks. I think should have been way more than that, but
it does in a way. I think they're basically just trying to expand and just do what they find interesting. I'm not saying they're burnt out or anything like that at all, but it's like, how many times do they have to keep publishing the same books over and over and over again as well too? Like the end of 4th edition, one of the last books was the Feywild book. So for all intents and purposes, do we really need to publish a book that they just published 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever it was? Do we really need to publish that one again? Or you just go to DM's Guild? I literally just looking at it. You can just go to DM's Guild right now and purchase that PDF for $15 and get all the information about the Feywild as it was when it was released. And what they're releasing now is just a small part of the whole kit and caboodle, as it were.
But according to what you've said, it's not canon anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right. And I think that's what brought up the whole question about, like, hey, what is canon?
Like what gods are canons? What like domains they have control over are canon? Did anything happen in the past? Has they even like beyond some stuff that happened in Adventurers League? How much have we even seen of like the Red Wizards of Fey?
Adventurers League is definitely not official at all.
I'm well aware, but I'm saying beyond Adventurers League, how much have we seen of the Red Wizards of Fey? Are they even around at this point?
Technically, they were part of D&D Next. The playtest that they had for D&D Next, which became 5th edition, was all about the Red Wizards of Thay.
Yeah, I didn't run that adventure. Those pre-game rules came out, and I immediately started running 5th edition, my version, because I was running it for kids, and I wasn't going to run them through the Red Wizards of Thay.
I'm going to run the Panda edition of D&D.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right, get you out your bamboo stalks.
Well, I think the Red Wizards of Thay and 11 and 12-year-old kids in a public library is not something I wanted to combine.
I think there is a Thay book scheduled for next year, I believe.
Okay.
At least one of the guys who wrote all the Thay books is writing one next year, and so everyone's assuming that that's another Thay book. Because getting any book that's not on the Sword Coast would be fantastic.
Sure. But yeah.
So,
well, I mean, wait, okay. So I know that they talked about all of the new Drow that are coming out, but what book are they actually showing up in?
New Drow.
Yeah. Where they broke down the Drow into like, no, there's good Drow now.
No,
there's
that's
like
already been released.
North Drow. But what book did it come out in?
I know that they discussed the Elistray Drow heavily in Waterdeep. In fact, that was my main campaign point because my wife was playing a Drow priestess, and her whole mission from Lolth was to basically disrupt and destroy the Church of Elistray in Waterdeep. So that church basically just
exists.
Yeah. So basically, she's just trying to get there and like screw up her plan. So they would go in there as like, "Oh, I'm a Drow. I just escaped the clutches of all the evilness that is the underworld." And basically, they just went to town and murdered every single person in that church. That was quite the adventure that they had. Hold on. So when I gave her the mission, immediately first thing they did is they scouted out and they go, okay, this is our plan of attack. We're going to go in there and we're just going to start. We're going to work our way through all the way and then murder our way out. So they get in there. And their plan goes as planned. They get all the way to the high priestess, and then they're like, all right, so you just start murdering every single person that is of Illustray on the way out, whether it be drow, human, and then they're like, no, we can't kill the people that aren't Illustray. No, we got to kill everybody, no witnesses, which became the theme of every murder hobo party I've had since then. So then they start murdering everybody else as well too. And by the time they get out of the church and out of the proper area and into the streets of Waterdeep, the Waterdeep guards are like encroaching in upon them. So the people that are out there outside the church right now is my wife, who is a priestess of Lolth, another drow fighter, who this is the second character, so he was there, and a player that's not on my stream, his name is Eddie. Eddie was playing a Tabaxi monk.
Okay.
All right, so they all got out to the street, and we all roll initiative because there's just Waterdeep guards everywhere. It was going to be a skill challenge, not a combat encounter, because we're trying to run. And Eddie goes up first with his like 35,000 initiative because Tabaxi monk.
Right.
And he goes, okay, I just calculated this out. With the Tabaxi skill, whereas I haven't moved, so I can double my movement speed. Mm-hmm. And with all the movement speed that I have, I can run 320 feet.
Yeah,
or some ridiculous shit like that. And so he's like, so I'm gone. Just the opposite way. And I was like, I can't argue with that. Yeah, you're just out of the encounter. You're done. And then my wife and the other player, they started running. And the other player actually got this amazing idea where he was going to cast the Drow Darkness on his shield, which like makes the Cloud of Darkness. And so you can cast it on an object that travels with the object. So they basically traveled in this cloud of darkness down the streets, and then chucked it one way and ran the other way. And they were able to escape that way, which is kind of neat. Then I had the Waterdeep papers come out the following day that announced that the guards were looking for 2 drow and a bugbear.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Because they didn't see the guy long enough to think that he's a tabaxi. They just saw a furry blur and he was gone. So they just assumed the bugbear.
Where are the tabaxi from?
Huh?
Where did the tabaxi come from?
That's what he wanted to play, a tabaxi monk.
No. I mean, like, in the world.
I have no idea. Where did the shifters come from?
I don't fucking know. This is what I mean. This is what I'm talking about. Like, if you want to know, like, where the dwarves come from, there's still the ability. It's out of date, but you can look up the different dwarven kingdoms that exist. I have no idea where the tabaxi come from. I know where 2 of my players have made their tabaxi come from, because when I have my players make characters, they need to tell me where they're from. But I like it lore wise. I don't know where the hell there's one. I mean, Schultz is the one that I guess it makes the most sense in my brain.
Not even then, because those are more primitive dwarves, not miners.
Well, I meant the tabaxi.
Oh, tabaxi. Okay, yeah.
Like tabaxi, like I don't know where the tabaxi are supposed to be coming from. Schultz is like one of the few places that makes sense to me. Jungle cats, cool. Big fast forest.
Well, the other thing too is that by the time 5th edition has hit, from a Sword Coast perspective, they've been through everything in 2nd edition, everything in 3rd edition, everything in 4th edition, and 4th edition has a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They go over like 2 centuries in 4th edition.
Yep.
And so everything has been so mixed and mingled by the time 5th edition comes around, at least in Forgotten Realms, especially on the Sword Coast, that I don't think it matters. It's just like, hey, you're a tabaxi? Cool. What city did you grow up in? And that's pretty much as far as you get because everything is so quote unquote civilized. So
there's no tabaxi empire. There's no, and that's I think the thing that I don't. Again, it goes back to like there's a lack of lore. Is there? Well, I mean, the elves are in the high forest. Sure, rock on. But like, where's the Elven empires at this point? Which of the dwarven kings are still rolling around?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is at least when it comes to 5th edition, I don't think any of that matters anymore because it's all about just the major cities. Because most of the Forgotten Realms, especially just really the 5th edition Forgotten Realms, is the Sword Coast and the cities of the Sword Coast. Just saying you're a dwarf is just, oh, cool, your mom and dad were a dwarf. What city did you grow up in? You grew up in Baldur's Gate. Okay, that's really as far as you go. They don't care about the Dwarven Kings or anything like that.
Grumble,
You
grumble,
could
grumble.
go and figure that out, but at the end of the day, I don't think it matters.
I'm sorry. A dwarf that grew up in Baldur's Gate does not have dwarven pride. Damn it. They didn't grow up singing the songs of the mountain. They don't know how to explore the caves. They didn't grow up in the hills raising sheep and fighting off wyverns and kobolds and orcs to try and protect the dwarven strongholds. They grew up in a city. They're not a dwarf anymore. They're a city kid.
Right, and that's why you have
Damn lack of lore in D&D. I'm actually getting pissed off at this point. This is for the fact of how generic whitewashed bull crap this entire 5th edition is. You're making me hate 5th edition. That's what this is coming down to. I am slowly, truly hating 5th edition. For realizing how lacking in any, for a game that's about story, they took out all the story.
Yep, they took out all the story and just left the adventure.
They barely left the adventure because their adventure without an adventure without a history is lacking.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I wanted to play an adventure where I'm defending the city of Mirabar, I want to know the history of Mirabar. I want to know what made that city what it is. I want to know why, they don't have enough miners anymore because there was a betrayal between one of the dwarven leaders and one of the other dwarven leaders. Somebody got imprisoned, and when they finally let him out, he ran off with another 300 dwarves, and now there's not enough miners in Mirabar, and now that's the background for your adventure. There's not enough miners, so they have to hire mercenaries to come in and protect the miners because there's not enough dwarves to mine and do all the mercenary work. So now they actually have to let non-dwarves down in the deep mines and the underpassages underneath Mirabar where there's monsters and entrances into the Underdark. Now you have to fight your way down there while protecting the different sections as the miners go through and have to do their job. Sorry, again, another.
So to answer your question, Tabaxi are from Nixal or Maztica, and
Okay.
I don't know where either of those places are.
I know the name Maztica. I'm trying to place where that is. I want to say
Also,
that's actually. I think that's east of Chult.
And basically, Chult is also where a majority
Or
of them.
is Mastica the island to the west of the Sword Coast? It's one or the other. That's the land to the west of the Sword Coast. Yes, that's where the Tabaxi are from.
But then again, that information was mentioned in Volo's guide, but was mentioned there because it was written back in 2nd edition.
Oh, good.
So, to lower your blood pressure and to wrap up.
Oh, that's not going to happen. I'm not sleeping tonight now. I'm worked up and pissed off.
So, I was on vacation this weekend, and one of the things my wife wanted to do on Sunday was watch AEW All Out. She loves wrestling.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not gonna say I can't stand it. I just find it funny, and I love that she loves it, and I'll watch it with her as much as she wants.
Sure.
And so there's always wrestlers that show up out of the blue, like, oh my god, it's so and so back from his 5-year gone, and oh god, it's a reverse pile driver. Ah. So one of these people that showed up out of the blue was a guy called the Butcher. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And you could Google AEW The Butcher right now, just so you get a picture of him.
AEW The Butcher.
He looks exactly what you think a metalhead.
He's a redneck.
Redneck monster would be. All right.
Oh, wait, there's a picture of him with a monocle. I like that one.
Yeah, he is scary looking. The man is 6'3", 275 pounds. Not as big as me, but still a monster. Tattoos from basically neck on down, wearing just a jean jacket or a biker jacket with no sleeves, and he looks kick ass. And so she's telling me about him. She's very happy that he's back. She's like, he leaves every once in a while because he's a guitarist. Okay. He's a guitarist of a group called Every Time I Die.
Yeah, I see that.
So I was like, so wait, so what you're telling me is that this muscular man of fear and intimidation is not a barbarian, is not a fighter, but it's the fucking bard?
Yeah, he's the bard. Of course he is.
He's the bard? That man pulls out a guitar and uses vicious mockery, and I'm just noping out of the fight immediately.
Well, no, he's a barbarian.
He's a barbarian. No, Craig is the barbarian, and he's a pacifist. Man, that man's a bard.
That's pretty badass. Don't discount the bards, man. They will kick your ass. Yeah, but then again, he's a professional entertainer. He has to have a decent charisma score. I mean, that's why he's a professional wrestler.
Yeah.
Good charisma score. He's multi-class. That's all it is.
So if he's bard first, multi-class second. What is his other multi-class? Being that he's a grappler.
Oh, he's just it's barbarian bard, buddy. That's all.
There's no grappler in barbarian, is there?
Oh, there doesn't need to be. You just take the grappler feat. That's all. It's all. I'm worried less about him doing the damage as much as he's just going to chokehold people until they're out. I mean, all you do is drive the breath out of them and maintain the chokehold for a number of rounds equal to their constitution bonus, and then they die.
Pretty much. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us then.
And then they die. Great. All right.
And then they die. So, all right, Panda, you going to sing our outro song?
God, there's an outro song too?
Yeah.
So long, the grumpiness has been your friend. Now go and spread anger through D&D. No, don't do that. Be happy, be friendly, be awesome, but maintain the boiling hate that inside your heart. I don't know, buddy. I'm rambling at this point. Shut me up and end this podcast.